Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Office Hours. It is Tuesday. It is 9 a.m. Pacific, and Ryan and I are here today to answer all of your questions about Alexa and development and software and the weather and whatever else you got. And Ryan's running off.
That's exactly right.
He's running off space internet today, so he's a little blurry.
Man, I've been having a bad week or so. So I live in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. We don't have real internet, so I did get Starlink installed like a month ago, and it's been great up until last week. I know that 40 satellites blew up or got destroyed by some weird flare thing, but I don't think that's anything to do with this. But I know other people have reported weirdness.
Yeah.
So,
well, you sound
bear with me.
You sound
well, that's
great.
good.
You're a little tough to see, a little blurry, but that's okay. Maybe I'm blurry too. Who knows? There's a bunch of people saying hello. Welcome, everybody, to the Office Hours. I'm glad you're all here. Speaking of weather, I mentioned that we'll talk about the weather, too, if you want to do that. Ryan, this morning I woke up. It was 16 degrees here. We've had some amount of snow on the ground for almost a month. And yet tomorrow, I will be able to go running in T-shirt and shorts. It is going to be.
Where are you going?
It's going to be 60. It's going to be 62 degrees here tomorrow.
I see.
They always joke about Ohio weather. If you don't like the weather right now, wait 30 minutes. It'll be different. And that is not inaccurate. There is no reason that it should be 17 this morning and 61 tomorrow, but it is.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited because it's getting warm enough that I can start heating my pool, so I can hopefully get in it in about a week or so.
Right.
So it's only in the range right now, but hoping for low 80s here soon.
Yeah,
so it'll warm up. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to make that trip out to Phoenix next year during the hard winter months.
Yes, I recommend it
just to get a breath. Well, welcome to everybody that's here. Thank you guys for joining us. Brian Tarbox, I've seen a few of your things on Slack, and I haven't responded to you yet, but I know you're really having some challenges with certification. You submitted ISP. I'm just going to read this out loud. So you submitted ISPs. You made changes for ISPs. You got feedback, which is fine. You fixed those ISPs and you resubmitted. Now you're getting rejected for a bunch of stuff that wasn't caught the first time that you certified, even though that stuff has not changed at all, whether that's through Spanish language. And now it's the 3 Spanish locales have an issue with the skill description being in the wrong language, even though all 3 locales have identical descriptions and have passed in the past. Yes. There's no excuse for this. This is unfortunately a case, I think, of an understaffed team trying to keep up with the demand. And as a result of this, I think probably they weren't as thorough when they went through. Now, again, this is all speculation. I don't actually have insights into this team, so I don't want to. I shouldn't be making assumptions about what went down for them. But I have had experiences like this in the past where I have been declined for certification on something that I didn't change this time, but it was just something they found this time. So I empathize. I feel your pain. I wish Scott was here so we could yell at him, but he is not. So, I mean, if they are things that violate the certification guidelines, you should fix them. Those rules are there in place for a reason. But if you disagree with their perspective on this stuff, that is where Contact Us comes into play. And I'm happy to help kind of shepherd those things. When you guys have Contact Us requests here and you're not getting the response that you need or want, that is one of the things that I can do is I can escalate these things and talk to our team about why we're treating it this way or why this stuff is happening. But if it is legitimate reasons to fix your skill, even though I understand the frustration of excuse me, of not being called out initially, if you are breaking the rules, you should avoid breaking the rules, I guess.
Yeah, I read the story this morning in Slack, and I'm very empathetic. And in fact, like, it reminded me of when I thought I was going to be an iOS developer and I was submitting apps and had similar experiences with Apple, where I would work on something and then I would submit it. They would give me feedback. I'd fix that. And then something unrelated, they would call out the next time. So that is a very frustrating experience. That's obviously not the customer experience that we want.
Right.
But unfortunately, like I don't have much of a suggestion other than just keep at it. And again, like what Jeff said, if something you think is inaccurate about the feedback, then that's a great time to contact us.
For sure. And I will tell you, this has affected me personally. We've talked about a skill that I created that was called Jeff Blankenberg, and I got it through certification. I was so excited, and I got people to start using the skill and like doing interesting things with it, including controlling a light that used to be in my background. And it wasn't until about a month later that I got a notification from certification saying, "Hey, we pulled your skill. You broke a rule. You can't have your skill be someone's name." And I was like, "But it's my name." They didn't seem to care about that. And so as a result, that skill doesn't exist anymore. I wish it did. It was kind of cool. But yeah, that is definitely a challenge of this certification process. There is a lot of it. We try to keep it as objective as we can, but there are certainly parts that are subjective and things that can be interpreted or overlooked. And so I'm sorry for the frustration. If you have gone through the contact us process, you said you did one. If you want to send me your ticket number, you can send it on Slack. I'll be happy to bump it and see what we can make happen. But that's about the best step we're going to be able to take. Yeah, Trade Last remembers, change the light to blue. So totally sucks. I'll do what I can to help you, and I'm sorry. That's unfortunately that's the best thing I've got for you. Okay. Laldi Lab says, I asked this yesterday in Slack, just wondering if you know, is there a way for skills to access the list of labeled locations that you can save in the Alexa app? And if you go into here, let me bring this up on my phone. If you go into the Alexa app and you go into settings, getting there, more, settings, your locations. I'm not going to show this because it shows my home address, but let's see if I can do part of it. No, I can't really do part of it. In there, you can have a work address. You can have additional locations. You can have a home address. I even had a location for the Kalahari in Wisconsin for some reason. I don't know why I would have added that address, but maybe for a presentation or something. But I'm not aware. No, I'm not aware of a way where you could programmatically gain access to that list, or when a user says, "Oh, send it to my home," or "Send it to my work," or something that would make perfect sense. I'm not aware of any way where you can grab that information or that address and then say, "Oh, okay, this is their home address. I'm going to use this as their shipping address," or something like that. That's a really clever idea, actually, and I don't know if that's on anyone's radar. So Ryan, we should write that one down.
Yeah,
and share that with the team, because if it's not possible, I mean, the user would still have to grant access to it. But as we announced at Alexa Live, we're working on voice permissions. And so it would be kind of cool for you to be able to say, all right, I need a delivery address. Can I have access to your saved locations? Which one would you like me to use? Home, cool. Here's the address I've got. This is where I'm going to mail your package or whatever the thing is. I could see how that would be a pretty cool solution to that. So let's that's not possible today, but let's think about how we can share that feedback with the team. I think that would be a good one.
Yeah, and what I like about that is it creates a nice end user experience where I'm not having to tell Alexa my address like 3 different times for 3 different skills. I like that idea a lot.
Yep. All right. Rockalock says, are there any more recent examples for using proactive events? This is the newer version of like the notifications API, the proactive events API, where we can let users know that a thing has happened. The only example he's found is about 4 years old. So I was just digging through the documentation on this. So if I go Alexa proactive events,
I found a GitHub. So this repository it's deceiving. So this is a repository that I linked that is 9 months old, but that's because it was exported from the Alexa cookbook, which is a deprecated repository, but there it's about 2 years old. So it's more updated than whatever you found that was 4 years old. That might be a good place to start.
Yeah. Are you on the one that was updated on September 18th, 2020?
No. I just pasted the link into the chat.
Okay.
It's Alexa samples /proactive events demo.
All right. So I found
GitHub.
the original Alexa cookbook one, which has an update of 2020. So like a year and a half ago.
Yes. That was exported into the repo that I showed,
Okay.
but
Cool.
mine has a newer timestamp, but it's probably just the moment the time it was exported. So the code is probably 2 years old.
Okay. Cool. All right. Let's see.
But if you've used that repository or you're going through it and something isn't working, please create a GitHub issue. I'm creating an initiative to really start looking into the GitHub repos. There are a lot of repos. They're not necessarily all up to date, and so we're going to go through and start curating them repo by repo. So this is going to take some time, so don't expect major changes by next week, but this is something that we're looking at, and I ran a bunch of numbers and did a bunch of reports, and we're not creating a great developer experience out of our GitHub right now. So I am working on that, and that's something that is one of my goals this year, is to kind of fix that experience.
When you hear people talk about a company the size of Microsoft or Amazon or even Google, it's like turning a really big ship. It's slow and it's a very deliberate process. So you need to go through with that. I feel like that's not necessarily always the best analogy. I feel like we are trying to turn a bunch of really big ships that are all somehow in a larger ship. And we're trying to turn each one of those just enough to make this stuff happen. So as an example, Ryan and I on our own cannot support all the GitHub repos and the forums and other stuff, right? We have an entire team that Scott's on when he's here with us. That's the developer advocacy group, and they manage things like the forums and some other stuff. And so we are trying to partner up with them more significantly to help resolve a bunch of the issues that we see in GitHub, to be able to have more active bodies, more helpers in the Slack, so that we can get to your questions quicker with better answers. So we're working on a bunch of different initiatives to help solve those problems. Now, again, it's not going to happen today. You have to do things like goal setting and make sure that people are being measured on their success with this stuff. It's a crazy, crazy world of chaos. And so those things are in motion. We're really optimistic about where we're headed, but it's not, like Ryan said, it's not going to happen today. Okay. Jawwork says that they have a GitHub and YouTube video using Python to handle the Alexa notification stuff. So that might be worthwhile to check out. If you guys don't, I'll throw this up on the screen really quick. GitHub, Jawwork, Alexa notifications in Python. If you're into Python, that might be a thing to check out. Or even if you're into JavaScript or something else, it might at least give you a framework for how to think. Because at the end of the day, it's all just about sending JSON back and forth to Alexa. So that might still give you the information you need to be successful.
I just started that repository.
Nice. Laldi Lab says that this is for he's the one that looking for access to the locations. This is for a location aware skill. It's just a nice way to let them enter their favorite locations that I can tell them about using their labels and mapping APIs. Yeah, I mean, there's a whole host of tricks and challenges to using those locations. The more I think about this, right? If they named it home and they say home, perfect. Probably can match it pretty easily. But what if they name it my house or something like that? And then you're like, oh, let me use your home address, but they didn't name it that or whatever, because I think they get to freeform the name of the place. You start running into some tricks and challenges. So it would almost need to be that you could get the entire array and then say, do you want me to use your home, your work, or your my house address, right? Like, you'd have to be able to almost give them the names that they named the things back at them so they know what to say. Because if you ask them, can I use your home address, and they don't have a home address, like I don't have my home address in mine, or my work address. Sorry, I don't have a work address because it's my home address. I'm not sure exactly how that would be solved, because unless you could pull an array that is just the names but not get the data, and then the user says, yes, I want my home address, and then the API gives you just that address, like there's some weirdness there. I don't think a user would want to give you all of their important addresses. So we'd have to think through those details. But overall, I think it's still an idea with merit.
Sorry, I was laughing. I just read Trey Less's comment where he said, we're trying to turn 100 duck-sized horses. And that's probably the best acronym I can come up with. So
Yeah,
that is
that feels like
perfect.
we need a quick cutscene here. Are you familiar with Bruce Springsteen?
I've heard of him.
You've heard of him?
Yeah.
I don't know how long this is, but I'll cut it off if it gets too long. Here we go.
All right, let me ask you one more here. This is from @TheRealRoberts. This is a very serious question. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
All right, wait a minute.
Oh my God! He's really thinking about it.
I have an answer.
Yeah.
Well, I have some horses, so I know what they're about. Yeah. And a duck will kick your ass if you're not careful.
Yeah.
If you get too close to it. So I would rather fight. If there were 100 duck-sized horses, they may not fight. They work in concert with people really well. Whereas
I love that you thought about this.
A huge duck would you up.
So there you go. I've got 6 more I could share at some point, but that's fantastic, Trade Last. We are trying to turn 100 duck-sized horses. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that. If you don't know, that's a reference to a show that I did all of last year called Alexa and Friends, where I brought in a bunch of interesting guests that were doing things all over the world of Alexa, from science to the business of it to engineering. And I asked every single one of them that same question. And so it was fun when I went to YouTube and I found out that that's been used with a bunch of celebrity interviews and stuff. And so I've got a bunch of those here. All right. So Chase Farmer on YouTube wants to say first time here. Well, welcome, Chase. Welcome to the party, the chaos. If this is your first time here, I'm also going to recommend that you make it your day where you go here as well for the first time if you haven't been. Alexa.design/Slack is our Slack community. And so it's a great place to come in and ask questions and talk with all like the people that are here and lots of other people. We're significantly over 2,000 people now at this point. So it's a nice community of people. Please check it out. Please join. We'd love to have you there too. That's 24/7. Office hours is 1. It's just the 1.
Just one.
Anyway, Chase, your question is, I'm trying to get CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment. Those that don't know that, working for my skill through GitHub Actions and code pipeline. I'm running into an error. Any suggestions? Well, one, I'm going to need a whole lot more information about what the error is or what you're trying to accomplish. But I think that if the general idea here that you are using GitHub Actions to push your code through code pipeline into, I would assume, a Lambda, all of that should be very doable. So I don't think that there's anything that suggests to me that what you're doing wouldn't be possible. But I don't know enough about your error specifically to figure out what might be going wrong. So what I would recommend is if you can be more detailed, it might be worthwhile to take this to Slack and just say, hey, everybody, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the error that I'm getting. And of course, as I recommend to everybody, if you are getting an error, as you say, take your error, go to Google, go to Stack Overflow first. You'll be amazed at the stuff you'll find there if you haven't done that already. But if you've already checked those boxes and you feel like, yep, I've done the Googling, I've done the searching, still can't find an answer, then yeah, let's go to Slack and let's see if we can figure this one out.
Yeah, all the bits and pieces are there to be able to do what you are trying to do. It's just it's stacking up a bunch of dominoes, make sure they're all connected right. So
exactly
depends on where the error is, depends on blah 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 blah. So
I'm working on this morning. Actually, I have I don't know if I've mentioned this. I collect baseball cards, and as a part of that, I have this huge database that I've built for myself. What'd you say?
I've heard you mention that before.
Yeah. And as a part of this, I've built this huge Airtable that has all of my cards cataloged. I've actually taken photos of the front and back of each card. I have the URL to a pricing website that shows you like prices of cards for every single one. But every one of those URLs requires me to be authenticated on their website, right? I go to their login form and I type in using password. And so I've been slinking around trying to figure out how I could potentially automate this whole thing, but that would require me to like kind of fake an authentication and then push a bunch of stuff through and like check each URL, screen scrape, grab the data because they don't offer an API. But I would love to be able to automate this process because prices change potentially week to week, but probably more likely month to month. and it would be nice for me to be able to click a button and have my entire database updated with the right prices. So sometimes you just got to figure out what all those chained pieces are and figure out how to play with them appropriately. I'm just trying to make an analogy to your situation, but what I'm doing is probably frowned upon. Anyway, that's another story. All right. So Lolly Lab says, I have some feedback about Contact Us. After the last office hours in which I asked for an update on a case, launching the Silk browser instead of my skill on Echo Show, I did get a ping soon after from the Contact Us team. So thanks whoever made that happen. However, no actual progress. They now appear to be in a de-escalation process where they ask for more information and say they'll be closing the case if I don't respond. Frustrating, but I'll continue to be patient. Anyway, that is my feedback. Well, how can I best address this? So a couple of things that I want to say about this. First, again, sorry for your experience. If you have a Contact Us ticket number that you can send to me on Slack, I'd be happy to look into it. We can have that conversation on Slack. But beyond that, I will tell you, without getting into the details, because I'm not allowed to really get into the details on this, there are a number of internal policies that affect a variety of things. And these policies are not written down, they're not shared publicly, but they're business rules that we've established that in some cases protect Amazon, sometimes protect some of our partners. There's a bunch of weird stuff. And as a result of those things, you may, I don't think this is it, but you may sometimes when you go through certification not get answers that resemble anything like you asked for. And often that's because you're probably running into some weird policy that they can't even tell you about. It's just an internal rule that we don't share publicly. There aren't a ton of them, but there are specific examples that I can't give. And so it's unfortunate when you feel like you've given them everything they need. You're looking for a very specific answer, and it just feels like you're getting dodged. That is likely the reason. It's not a good answer, but it's likely the reason why that stuff is happening. So that being said, Lolly Labs, if you want to send me your Contact Us number, I'd be happy to dig into it and see what is holding it up, and I'll share everything that I can find. But I don't understand why they're trying to de-escalate you out of this. It does feel like they should be following through on this for you. That's the whole customer-centric world that we're supposed to live in here. So hopefully we'll get that figured out for you. Okay, Joelwork says he's got a bunch of Python vids. There should be an ISP one this week. Awesome, Joelwork. We'll have to check that stuff out. I didn't realize that you were making videos, but this might be a good opportunity also to talk with our social media team, Ryan. If he's making awesome content, should talk about telling people about it.
Yeah.
Again,
I'm looking them up right now on YouTube.
Any promises? I just stand here and talk for an hour, so I'm not promising that we can do any of that stuff, but it seems like a thing we should think about. Bondad, good to see you, Bondad. If you guys don't know John, he's behind a bunch of very, very cool skills. He's done stuff for the NFL, and we had a Alexa Conversations hackathon a little while back, probably a year ago, and his skill Art Museum won that. It was very, very cool. So it's good to see you, John. He just moved to Seattle, so if anybody's in the Seattle area, he's looking for friends. Okay. Moving on. Good to see you, John. Lots of JSON flying around this world. Laldi says, if they say grocery and I can access this setting, I know which store they mean.
Come back to your address.
Yes, I think you need some way to be able, like, we're now talking about a non-machine learning based matching engine where they say grocery, if that's one of their, like, the grocery store location that they want. We need a clever way for you to be able to match grocery. What I'd like to see, this is a perfect world scenario, is that you say, hey, can I have access to your addresses? Maybe it's one time, maybe it's via voice, whatever. We provide you with an array that is the names of their locations. Nothing else, just the names. You then create a dynamic entity and populate that with these values so that when they say one of the names of their places, we can do actual machine learning match against the thing that you want, and then say, hey, this is the entity that was resolved, and here's the value that goes with it. I'm architecting it in my head as we go here, but that's kind of how I'm picturing that stuff would work. Okay, Atul Raj on YouTube says, I have a custom skill, and when I invoke it from Alexa, then it fails. I have 3 languages supported, but it fails to launch the skill. Okay, I got to go through the basics on this one. Actually, Ryan, do you have any thoughts on this before I just start hard charging into it? He's trying to invoke the skill, and it's failing. What would you do to diagnose?
First thing, I wasn't looking at this one at all, so now I'm going through it. Okay. So one of the first things I want to know is what language your phone is set to, so that we know which one it's trying to invoke in your backend. And then also, if you run this through the simulator, what's happening there. What I really like about using the Alexa simulator in the dev console is it gives you like the responses, the requests and the responses back to your Lambda function. But I think I would need to. I think the biggest question I have is what language is your Alexa currently set at, to know which language it's actually trying to request, and that'll help kind of narrow down where to begin debugging this. But there's still a bunch of different places where I think there could be problems.
Yeah, and the languages is a good clue to me too, that potentially it's a language thing. But one of the other things that I always like to check is he's building a custom skill. It sounds like, I mean, he has 3 languages supported, so he's not a brand new developer. Other stuff that I always like to check, especially when you have multiple languages, is that you've updated the invocation name on each of the language models. Because when you create a new model, I think it sets the invocation name to change me, I think. And so you'll want to make sure that you actually have the invocation name set to the word that you think it should be for that specific language in that specific skill. That's the other one that stands out to me. But as Ryan said, I think using the simulator should give you some clues, because if you're not getting the IO, the response and request JSON shown there, then you're not hitting your skill. And that's often a pretty clear indication to me of whether or not something is working properly.
Yeah, like I also want to know like what fails means. Does it not even load the skill? Because then the invocation name, but I was assuming like it started to load the skill and then something failed at that point, in which case it gets past the invocation name, but then get, one of those generic. And
so we keep poking and picking at this, and hopefully Atul will have another response for us here in a little bit, and we'll dig in further. Habuma says, hey, I cover that in my book, which he provides a very nice link to. It's still in beta form, but I just pinged my editor to find out why it hasn't gone to the printers yet. It's been done for a couple of months. So Habuma has written a book on Alexa, and you can find that at pragprog.com. I'll show the whole quote here, pragprog.com/titles/CW Alexa, if you want to check that out. I think it's also available on Amazon, as I recall, or I guess maybe not, maybe pre-order. But it'll be interesting to see why that's being held up. Okay, everybody's laughing at Bruce Springsteen now. Let's see. Oh, Chase says his Lambda trigger is incorrect. So we would need to look at this for you, Chase. Well, I guess you would need to look at this, but you would want to make sure that your Lambda function, in order to be called by Alexa, you need to enable the Alexa Skills Kit trigger on your Lambda function. I'm assuming you're like building your own Lambda in your own AWS account, and that's how you're chaining all this stuff together. But if you build your own Lambda function to run an Alexa skill, the Alexa Skills Kit trigger has to be enabled. And beyond that, you should also include this. It'll ask you for your skill ID. This prevents other services from being able to call into your Lambda directly.
Yep.
So I would recommend making sure that you check each of those. That's now based on new information you just shared. That's kind of where I would lean. If it's just a trigger issue, just make sure that ASK, Alexa Skills Kit, is set as a trigger. It's one of the first 3 or 4 options.
Yeah, there's this weird circular dependency that you kind of have to get past. And I was banging my head against this actually last week, where you need to create the skill. So you create the Lambda, and then you create the skill, and you get the skill ID from that. Go back to your Lambda and update the event trigger for your Lambda to give permission for that skill. and then you go back to your skill and you point the ARN over. So it's this weird thing you have to go back and forth, and it makes sense. You have to do exactly in that particular order for the permissions to be aligned.
Well, right, and it protects it too, right? Because
Yes.
otherwise you leave it exposed to being able to be called by anything. This will decline a call from anything but that skill ID.
Yes. But it is weird. You have to do it in a very specific order.
Don, this is an interesting question. It would be interesting to have a segment in office hours where a subject matter expert be made available to discuss and answer questions in their area of expertise. That is such a brilliant idea. We are working on.
He's calling out that we're the generalist guys, so I love it. I love it.
We are the generalist guys, and we can solve most of the problems, but especially for Don's very specific needs, where he's having these weird challenges with Amazon Pay and whether or not he needs account linking. I agree.
To be clear, like 100% agree with Don. I love this idea.
So we have been talking about this. We've been talking about ways to broaden office hours, either by letting you guys know ahead of time that, like, hey, next week we're going to have an APL expert here, or hey, next week we're going to have Amazon Pay, or whatever it is, so that you have time to prepare your questions and come and potentially even submit them ahead of time so that they are ready to answer all of your questions and don't have to think on the spot about some of this stuff. But yes, we are actively working on that. Again, many ships inside a larger ship. We are working with our social media team on promotion to get more people here, to do all sorts of stuff. So yes, I think that is in our plans. We have to figure out how frequently to schedule people. Like an APL person, I probably want to have them at least once a month. Amazon Pay, maybe not as frequently, but as we dig into this, I also have to then find all of those experts. Because Don, honestly, with your specific situation, if I knew who I should send you to, I would have done it. But I just don't even know who that person is. And so that's also a challenge for us, but we'll get there. All right. Vladimir Kiryanov is saying, is someone using local development Visual Studio Code? Yes. It says Vladimir. So yes, I am doing that frequently. The full local development, local debugging, all of that stuff. So if you have specific questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But yes, I don't. Yes, absolutely, we're doing that. And I would imagine a lot of the people in the audience are as well. So I've answered that question. I'm imagining there will be a follow-up to that. Okay, Gravinder Singh wants to know, he loves Alexa and uses it on a daily basis, wants to know if I could share some numbers such as how many daily active users there are and how many devices use Alexa. No, I can't do that. There are very specific windows of time in which I can share some numbers. And so what I'm going to do is go to the reInvent website where I have a presentation. I'll have to find the video for this. Let's see if I watch on demand content. This is just going to take me a second. I'm going to dig up a link to a video that you can watch. But I gave a presentation at reInvent. So this was only November. It's not that long ago. And I need to find the Alexa session. What's new with Amazon Alexa? Okay. So I think I can just give you this link. Now, what you'll have to do is you'll probably have to register. So the link I'm giving you right now probably takes you to a login screen or something like that. But once you're logged in or have an account or whatever, you should then be able to go directly to this link again, and you can watch this video. So in this presentation, I talk about, let's see if I can find it.
People are starting to do the idea that
it's
from the revenue
on YouTube too, isn't it?
I don't know, maybe.
I think I just found it. What's new with Amazon Alexa 2021?
Yeah, that's it.
I probably should be directing people to reInvent, but I just posted the YouTube link.
The numbers that I had in there, it says the number of customers engaging with skills grew 40% year over year. Customers engage with skills billions of times a year. Um, I thought I had another one in there about like just number, like at least an estimation. There's hundreds of millions of Alexa-enabled devices. That's actually with like the ability to talk to Alexa on the device. So this isn't like every smart switch and stuff like that. Hundreds of millions of Alexa-enabled devices. Yeah, I think those are the only numbers that I was able to pull out. Customers engage with skills billions of times a year. Yeah. So we don't go into a lot of the specifics, but I do get an opportunity once a year to talk about some of the big picture numbers. But I don't have things like daily active users. That probably varies greatly by the day of the week and the month of the year. And I'm sure it peaks right after Christmas as people get new devices, and then it kind of tapers down to what is a normal use. So yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna move on from that, but Gravinder, hopefully those links will help a little bit. TradeLast says the dynamic entity examples in the docs relate order milk to a specific brand of milk. It should apply to use cases like which grocery store. I agree, TradeLast, and I think this is what we're hinting at is kind of the future, right? Where when I say milk, it knows that I mean the very specific type of milk that I buy at my grocery store. Because it can get that context based on a number of other factors. The same with like home addresses and all sorts of other things. But we currently haven't really enabled or unlocked that contextual engine where once I've told it something, it remembers it and then utilizes that context across all other experiences as well. I think that is the future. That is where a lot of this is ultimately headed, is that not just Alexa, but the overarching ecosystem of data that you create on the internet. Imagine being able to give AI a secure, proper access to the right kinds of data at the right time, so that when you need to know something or when it needs to know things, like let's say I've used this example in the past, but let's say I talk to my device and I say, hey, make me a dentist appointment. Well, it knows who my dentist is. It knows who my healthcare provider is, so it can check and make sure that it makes the appointment far enough out that it's not in the 6-month window of care that I have to have. It can communicate directly with my dentist server and like make the appointment automatically. Like all of that stuff would be amazing, but I don't want to have to tell it all of those things every single time. I just want to say, make a dentist appointment and be done with it. So there is a lot of contextual data that needs to exist. And I think we are headed in the right direction, but it's still quite a ways off from being able to do that. All right.
Yeah. I love that vision of the future.
Yeah. I mean, context is key to all of this. If, again, we have to lean away from the idea that there's going to be malicious systems and like inappropriate use of our data, but assuming
people screen scraping forms and stuff.
If you think about secure private access to the data that you want a system to have access to, and they use it in the way that is meant to be appropriate, I think that the future is very bright for how this kind of artificial intelligence can help us. But I always have to start with security, privacy, trust. Like it all starts there. And if it doesn't start there, then none of the rest of it matters because no one will use it. A. Witters was celebrating that your internet was back. And then
is it?
And then mentioned right after that he spoke too soon.
Oh, I did lower my quality down. I'm trying to broadcast 720p, hoping that the nice thing is Starlink gives me like all these different graphs. So I can see how sporadic all my different usages. The green down there at the bottom is my upload speed.
Wow.
So you can see it's kind of all over the
scale
place.
on that?
The scale? It's currently going between 0 and 2 megabits per second. Isn't that fantastic?
No. That's not amazing.
Starlink is better than this. I don't know what's going on last week.
Yeah, you're not getting them new customers.
Well, they should fix it, and then I'll gladly endorse it.
Okay, moving on. Lolly Labs has another interesting question here. What are some workarounds for getting difficult data into a skill, especially for types that are hard for NLU, like alphanumeric or uncommon names? I saw one where the dev overloaded account linking, presented a login form, but rather than actually link to a third-party account, they persisted the data so it's then available to the skill. Is there any better way, short of building a companion web page, which is way too much friction? So what you're trying to do is get alphanumeric values. Let's talk about like a license plate, right? You want to be able to say R7926M, right? Like that is pretty challenging to do in Alexa today. And the other example that they used was uncommon names. Also tricky. No, there is not today an effective way to get difficult data into a skill aside from form filling, companion website, companion app, something like that, or asking them to spell it. That's really the two best options that I've found for that. But I don't have a better answer for you.
You could have so you could maybe do something like, say, text me your name to this phone number, and then you can process the incoming text, or probably do the same thing with email where you're scanning the incoming emails. But I think like ultimately the keyboard is going to be the best input device for those sort of strings of text.
Yeah, I hadn't considered
voice
texting.
is just,
I think that's a good one. But again, it's more friction. Right now, instead of them standing in their kitchen without any devices in their hands, they have to go to a device and do. That's another option though. If they have an Echo Show, they could just type it in right on right in the screen. Lolly, that might be a consideration. Again, it really only works for devices with screens, but it's a possibility, right? You could put a text box and have them type the thing in on an on-screen keyboard and hit submit. That would work. I haven't done that. I should learn how to do that. I'm sure there's a fantastic example on APL Ninja.
That's what I was just going to say. APL Ninja to the rescue, I'm sure.
Okay. Andy Muncie wants us to get someone from Amazon Advertising and Fire TV, please. All right, Andy. We'll flag that. We'll see what we can do to get some experts in here on very specific things. Rockalock says, I'm working on a skill for my retirement community that will speak the email messages from the management team. For beta testing, I'm using the name of the community. Will that be a problem when I seek certification? I don't think so. I mean, if I imagine it's like, I'm thinking of like a retirement community name, like Hidden Bridges, or I don't know. I don't know what they're really called, but let's pretend that your community is called Hidden Bridges. You should be able to call your skill Hidden Bridges. I think the catch is it has to be 2 words. It can't be owned by someone else, like Star Wars. That's fine if you called your retirement community Star Wars, but your skill can't be called that. But outside of like those major trademarky things, you shouldn't have any problem with that. And if you did like Hidden Bridges Community or whatever, like that would be. I don't know why I came up with Hidden Bridges.
I have no idea where that came from.
That'd
be a terrible bridge.
Yeah. No, I can't think of any reason why the name of the community would be a problem. Unless it's a set of weird words or something. But you didn't mention, at least in this comment, what that is. Brian Tarbox wants to know if it's possible to set up tasks in the console or only via the CLI. I believe this is still only a CLI thing. And this is one of those things that I feel like I need to apologize for every time we encounter a question like this, because there are certain things that you can only do in the console, and there are certain things that you can only do in the CLI, and there's no full parity on one side or the other, right? So it's like this weird split where most of the stuff can be done in both, and then you have a little bit of things that you can do on either side. So I'm not aware of a place. I'm trying to just think as I walk through the console in my head. I don't believe that you can create tasks there. No. No, I'm not aware of a place.
Well.
All right. Brian Tarbock says he's seeing more than 50% of his users are on devices with a display, and it's continuing to increase. That's awesome.
That is.
I don't have, again, I don't even have access to like the raw data on those kinds of things, but I always assumed it was probably like a 25-75 split, 75 being non-screen devices. But that's, I mean, if you're seeing 50%, that's a good sign. I would like there to be more screens. It unlocks all sorts of other experiences.
I guess it depends on what kind of skill it is too. Because like music, I'd imagine is 90% devices without a screen. Because that's where I use it. But then the screen ones I tend to go to when I have something more visual. I don't know. It's weird.
All right. Santosh Kalshetty on YouTube says, "Hi team, I'm looking for an internship program. I'm a third-year computer engineering student." Santosh, I have the place for you. Let me see if I can find this here quickly. I thought I had a very dedicated, yeah. You're going to want to head over to Amazon.jobs. This is the one place, and TradeLast can attest to this. This is how you get hired at Amazon. You go here, you find the roles you're interested in, you upload your resume, you submit your application, and hopefully you get a phone call or an email that says, "Hey, we'd love to talk to you about it." So this is the only way, though. I wish that there were like magical ways that I could say, "Oh, you sound awesome. Let me introduce you to this person," but it doesn't work that way at all, unfortunately. Our recruiting engine is a completely separate beast. It's its own ship, and inside there, you've got to follow these processes. So Amazon.jobs is your spot. If you're looking for internships, they're there. If you're looking for full-time jobs, they're there. If you want to work at a warehouse, they're there. So Amazon.jobs is definitely the place I would go to try to find something like that. Prisoner 4044, that's Alan Furstenberg. He said, "Context is queen." I mean, while I like the gender parity we're offering there, oftentimes queen is used as the second rank. And so I don't know if you're just trying to offer gender parity, which in that case, fantastic. All right, context is queen. But if it's not, what is first? Curious. That's an interesting discussion. I think context is probably the most important piece of every experience we create. With APL, when there is an existing carousel with content displayed, performing a new directive to display the carousel new items adds the new items to the existing rather than replacing. Any ideas? We talked about this a few weeks ago, I feel like.
I know.
And it was sending a directive that clears the screen prior to sending the directive that creates the new carousel. I have to imagine that creates some kind of gross flicker or something like that, but I think the built-in native functionality for something like the carousel is when you provide it a new carousel, it just adds it to the experience the user has rather than deleting and refreshing. So I believe sending a clear screen directive is probably your best path here, which eliminates that context. And then when you send the new one, it treats it independently.
Yeah, it seems like the question is treating this as a bug. And I think this is kind of a feature that the APL helps you maintain state inside the APL. So it's trying to be helpful by saying like, you don't have to maintain in your backend code every single carousel item. It's just saying like, just give me the new ones and we'll maintain it for you.
Right.
But then there are certain things you have to do to kind of clear that out. And I think what we talked about last time was there's not necessarily great ways to clear out that state that's currently loaded on the device. So clear screen seemed, I'd love to know if anyone tried that actually.
Yeah. Those are unfortunately things that we can't just like spin up a quick demo here in 5 minutes. But I'd love to. All right. So Ethan said, it looks like there's a cache that must be keeping hold on the previous carousel content. Is that true? Yes, I believe that is by default, on purpose. But being able to send that clear screen directive should I mean, it should eliminate it, like should solve the problem. What I don't know is what that visually is going to look like, where you have like carousel, blank carousel. I don't know how that will I don't know how that'll feel. Don offers some feedback, Ryan, on your webcast,
Saw that.
which is that there is a notable change in resolution that varies over some frequency. It might be part of the Starlink satellite situation. I think he's probably right. It's your resolution
fair,
sometimes amazing and sometimes not.
To be fair, Starlink is still in beta, so I knew that. I didn't really have too many other options. And I think it's when their plan is to launch like tenfold the amount of satellites they have now. So I'm hoping that it just gets better over time.
Yeah. Agreed.
I'm trying to make do.
So Atul Raj says, I'm able to invoke the custom skill in English US locale, but on English IN, which is the Indian English, and English UK, which is the UK English, is not being invoked from the Alexa device. In a simulator, it is working. Okay. So the trick here is that when you set up a device, this is my suspicion. Again, you could tell me I'm wrong. When you set up a device, you set it up in a locale. So if you were talking to your device, and let's assume that each of the versions of your skill has a different invocation name. So you have like skill A and skill B and skill C. They have different names. And so you're talking to your device and you say, open skill A. And it's like, oh, cool, here's skill A. And it goes. And it works just fine. And then you say, open skill B. And it says, I don't know what to do. Or it opens something else. The reason for that is because your device has to be assigned to a specific locale in order to access the skills in that locale. So if you are not making the de facto change to your device, like in your account, you have to actually go and change the device, say, no, the language for this device is now English IN. And then you talk to it and say, open skill B. Yeah, that is exactly the experience I would expect, is that it's not being invoked. So I don't know if you're going through those steps, because, kind of resetting your device each time is kind of annoying. Or what I've seen a lot of people do, including Bondad, who was on here earlier, he had the International Board of Alexa, and he built this vertical board that had an Echo Dot, and he made flags for each one of them that represented the locales and languages. And so he would just mute all of them except for the country he wanted, and then he could just unmute and then talk to another one. But he had a Echo Dot set up for each of the locales, so he could just test that automatically, because changing the locale on a device it's a not painful process, but it's a couple of minutes. And so I don't know if you're doing that or not, but that might be the reason. A device only talks to one specific marketplace at a time, and you would need to change that. Where the simulator, you can just change the dropdown and it works automatically. TradeLess says, I can imagine a personal knowledge graph accessed by a skill the way Alexa Entities provides results from the general knowledge graph. I could actually absolutely imagine that. Yeah, I think that would be amazing.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
All right. We have 7 minutes left. Talking earlier about catching difficult names, Maja Abraxa 1982 said, if it's a special name that you could just add it to the name slot. I think the challenge that they're facing is that they don't know it's going to be a weird name. This is not a name that they can anticipate ahead of time, but they are trying to catch when it's spoken, and that's a very, very messy problem. Dana Voice says, if you create a custom slot type for mixed numbers, which Amazon.number doesn't handle, it works fine with just a couple of examples. Would this work with input like AMX123? Maybe. I haven't actually tried that. I have built samples. This was years ago, but I have built samples where I just provided it with a bunch of nonsense. Things like AMX123 and then 274 AJK or whatever. But what ends up happening is it doesn't recognize those things at all. And what you're building for the machine learning engine is a pattern of randomization. It looks like anything can go here. And so what you start to construct is something that looks more like the search query slot, where it ends up having a bunch of gravity, because anything it doesn't know, it's like, oh, well, it probably fits in there because I don't recognize the pattern that's happening. So that can be somewhat dangerous. It doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that you really want to make sure you're protecting your other slots, because again, if it doesn't know that it's a perfect fit for something, it will then automatically kind of end up in that randomized slot because it's just a bunch of odd words. This was before the search query slot existed. This was the way that we would get it to catch anything. We would just we used to find word randomization websites, and we'd get a list of like 500 words from that website and just make that our slot, and then it would take anything. Because there's no clear and obvious reason why anything wouldn't go there. All right, before I move on to questions, I want to make sure we had one thing that we wanted to tell you guys about today, and I'm going to let Ryan kind of talk about it, but I want to make sure we make our announcement before we wrap up here.
Yeah, so as you guys know, we released A/B testing into general availability here recently, and coming up on Wednesday, I was going to say Thursday. It seemed like we always did tech talks on Thursday, but tomorrow, Wednesday, we have a tech talk, and let me actually post the link.
Is it tomorrow or is it next Wednesday?
A week from Wednesday. Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
All right. So anyway, a week from Wednesday, not tomorrow. I'm ready for February to be over. I get my pool sooner. So
right.
We have a tech talk next Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time, going through A/B testing and everything you need to know. So what are the most effective use cases for A/B testing, how to set up an A/B experiment, how to integrate it, and how to analyze the results. So if you're interested in A/B testing, which anyone who's produced a skill, like I come from the marketing world, and A/B testing is how marketers learn everything, right? And so I'm a firm believer in constant A/B testing your skill and the experience, and trying to understand what works better and what doesn't. And so I think this would be a really valuable tech talk to go and listen to. And so sign up for it if you're interested. Again, next Wednesday, the 23rd at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yes.
I was going to look. I thought there was an actual clear screen command, but it might just be that you send an empty APL doc in. Going back to that clear screen.
Okay, I got to look into this now.
Yeah.
It's come up enough times that I need to actually do this and see what happens. Because I don't want like a really bad flicker to happen, right? Like
right,
I have
exactly.
this beautiful design, it's engaging, and then all of a sudden it flashes blank and then flashes content again. That would be jarring.
Scott Espeseth. Well, that's a tricky one, Scott. Scott Espeseth asks on Facebook, when are we going to be able to set the response voice volume separate from the player and music volume? Fantastic question. Not today. I'll flag this as another thing to look into, but I'm not aware of anything today. And as I qualify all of these with, if I did know, we wouldn't be able to share any future stuff. So when it's there, it'll be there, but I'll look into that and see if it's even on our roadmap. I would hope that it is, but I don't know for sure. Santosh Kalshetty on YouTube says, sir, give me any project related to Alexa with Python. Do you have a link, Ryan, to like the Python GitHub, or maybe should we start him with Cake Time on Python?
Yeah. So here, let me actually get you. I'm in agreement. So you're speaking my language. I think that we need more Python everywhere. We have way too much Node. Not way too much. I'll say we have really great Node, but we need matching Python. I did also, and this is what Jeff was referring to, I redid the Cake Time tutorial and made it into a new workshop. And one of the things I'm working on is building out more workshops this year. Now, one of the big things I did was inside the old Cake Time had like all kinds of JavaScript instructions. So in this new version of Cake Time, there's JavaScript, but then you can click another tab and see Python. So you can go through the whole workshop in Python. And this is how I'm trying to approach workshops, is I don't want to have one preference over the other when we're talking about languages. Although I'm probably going to keep it to those two. I probably won't have Java versions alongside. That's a whole different thing.
It is.
creating jar files and so on. But those two scripting languages, Node and Python, are going to be, hopefully you'll see my influence, which will be more Python.
Yeah. Compilation adds a whole new twist to managing your application for sure.
Yes.
All right. I think that's it. I want to mention that Hubuma mentioned for volume specifically, Scott, that SSML and APLA do allow you to adjust the volume of the speaking voice independent of everything, but it is per response. So you would need to add that directive to every single thing in your skill always. But you are able to set those volumes programmatically, but you would have to do it per response. Every time you wanted to respond, you could make it loud or soft or whatever. And it would be independent of the volume that they have set on their device, I think. I think you can just do like extra loud. Ooh,
It's gotten up to 3. It's gotten up to 3, guys.
nice. You look beautiful right now.
Oh, this is awesome.
I can see individual hairs on your head.
Wow.
Crazy. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. We have hit the time. Always enjoy this every single week. So I'm glad you guys can join us. I'm glad we can answer most of your questions, and hopefully you leave a little bit happier or a little bit more satisfied every single week. But if not, hit me up on Slack and we'll figure out a way to solve your problem. So we'll see you guys in Slack between now and the next office hours. Everybody take care.
Thanks, guys.